launch now. Okay, perfect. All right. Well,
That's 2 minutes till showtime.
okay, I'll wait.
I'll send a greeting to people, letting them know we'll start in a couple minutes.
Hi, Nicole. I see you here. Oh,
Hi, Nicole. Can you unmute yourself and just say a word so we know your mic's working?
Word.
All right, perfect. Thanks.
I quickly try to practice sharing my screen because I just realized I took the update of Microsoft and I just want to make sure I can do it.
Try it right now, and
Okay.
then after that, we'll.
Can you guys see this?
Yep, looks good.
Yay.
All right, it's almost 2 o'clock. So I'm going to press the record button and everything henceforward will be recorded.
Okay.
It's 2 o'clock. I'm going to let folks in.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dispatches from Quarantine. My name is Alexandra Kostoulis. I'm the editor of this publication, and I'm the founder of the SF Creative Writing Institute. And I started Dispatches from Quarantine sort of in the middle of the night at the early part of the quarantine, just like in March 2020. I think the lockdown in San Francisco was on March 17th or March 15th. And then I was quiet and it was late at night and I was like, what do I do? And so I just decided to start blogging again. I was a blogger 10 years ago and then I stopped and then I just thought, well, let me blog again. And I researched blog names and I thought, I'll call it Dispatches from Quarantine. And so I bought a domain, dispatchesfromquarantine.co. Because it was $1. It was cheaper than .com, so that's why it's .co. And then I just started writing my thoughts, and they were kind of late night, anxious sort of writer ravings and sort of meandering worries that became art. And as a writer, I feel like this is the time where it's all happening so fast and things are moving in such a quick direction, but we have all these things to say, and it's important to write them down. So then I turned it into an open call for submission, and I asked writers I knew to send in work, and then put it out into the universe, and people sent in work, and then we published them, and so here we are, almost a year into the quarantine, and I am having all sorts of feelings about it. I don't know if you are, but there's a lot of, weird sort of tumultuous feelings going on in the last year, some good, some bad, mostly bad. And sort of all I've been noticing with the writers I know and the writers in my classes, we've all been kind of in this weird state where like, how do we chronicle this time? We're writing. I taught a class, everybody wrote about their regrets. At the beginning of the quarantine, like everybody was kind of locked inside thinking about the regrets of their lives. And then, and then other things, people, then there were all this civil unrest, people wrote about that. There was Trump and the inauguration and the protests in the 6th. So we've been kind of, the riots in the 6th. So we've been kind of chronicling the dispatches as they come in. We've got 50 published. We have about 100 more submissions in the pipeline, which we're going to get up in the coming weeks. And we invite you to submit as well. If you're watching, email is submissions@dispatchesfromquarantine.co. And I'd like to introduce our first reader. First with us, we have Paul Corman Roberts. Paul Corman Roberts is an instructor at SF Creative Writing Institute. He's published 5 poetry books, and his newest one is coming out by Nomadic Press in 2021. It's called Bone Moon Palace. Paul Corman Roberts, read us your quarantine poems.
I do have quarantine poems. This is called American Steel. Silver syringe seeks sweet spot in that crook where your naked shoulder and sleek neck come together and scream for a warm and wet slickening of salivatory supplication cream and salvation right after the shudder, a new kind of prayer, a new kind of immunity. And then this one is one that appeared in Dispatches from Quarantine, as Alexander was just talking about. This is called In the Sanatorium. In the sanatorium, everything is made out of lies. I mean, everything. The sheets, the wallpaper, the counters, the desks, the wall clocks, the beds, the trays, the vital monitors, the ventilators, the food, the clothing, the floors. All the words on all the forms and brochures, all the words that come out of the mouths of the doctors and attendants and administrators, and yes, even the patients. No one lies more than the patients. Even the devices that manufacture the lies are made out of lies. In here, lies make up the fabric of reality, so that in the sanatorium, the truth is a hidden and mysterious thing, so rare and precious that it is the most beautiful and dangerous thing anyone can imagine possessing. Even as I write this, the Axis and the Allies, the Nazis and the Socialists, yes, even the Union and the Confederacy are in a desperate race against each other and the clock, not only to possess this truth, but more critically, to prove to the rest of the world that they really do possess this truth. So rest assured, we are going to be here for a while. Just 2 more short poems. This poem is entitled To the Older Bosnian Man in a Velour Tracksuit Smoking a Cigarette Beneath Hooded Eyes in Front of the Surfside Palms apartment complex this afternoon. I swear to God, I wasn't staring at you. And that poem is dedicated to Joel Landmine. And I will conclude with this poem called Easy Bake Apocalypse. A hard crack rings out to my right. A very large Corvid-19 sits there glaring at me. They have broken a thick branch off a beach bramble near the top of a small dune and hold it in their beak. 72 inches between us, we stare each other down for a hard few moments, and then they lift off into the stiff bay breeze, a long, curved overhead arc that makes me nervous enough to flip my Dubs hoodie up. I think about how I had been set up for my first successful April poetry challenge. 30 poems to be written in 30 days. It was coming in a preset pandemic mode. There's no way I wouldn't nail it. But once more, I will settle for something less. Something clumsy and awkward, but perhaps no less wrenching in this soon-to-be romantic age. The days we were always talking about how to begin social encroachment, how to violate boundaries, to get themselves a bigger stick. The days we have always talked about sift through our fingers and minds, a distant echo of a giddy laugh that was once nearby. This is all gentler and softer than it has a right to be. The days we always talk about flapping about our crowns and ears, and we wonder where our hats and hoodies went. The days we always talk about have been replaced by talk of newer days to come. My favorite elephants get up off the couch and step up to the plate, only to lay their bats down and shuffle off mumbling these newer days are cobbled together with the more ephemeral sand than we have ever sunk our fingers and toes and heads into before. Mudflats and kites litter the quarantined beachfront, and yet children joyously skipping and sprinting from muddy sandbar to muddy sandbar at low tide, like a swarm of miniature pioneers staking out little homesteads on a large lakefront. Not unlike the way any beach looks right before a tsunami ripples through. These days are the good old days. I think the challah is stale enough now. Let's make French toast for dinner. Thank you, everyone.
Yay, thank you for reading and for being our first reader. I'm going to post the order in the chat, and it's nice to see people in the audience too, and it makes us feel like we're really together, which is great. But if you get tired of being in the audience and you just want to listen, you can also go to the YouTube live stream, and that's fine too. Okay, introducing our next reader. What happened to my Google Doc? Our next reader is Dana Rod. Dana Rod is a non-binary poet who writes to illuminate their experiences in the Iranian American diaspora and queer communities through creative nonfiction essays and poetry. Their debut poetry collection, Scattered Arles, is forthcoming from Milk and Cake Press in May 2021. Without further ado, Dana Rod.
Hi there, thank you so much for having me. Most of these poems I'm reading today are all written in quarantine, and they are modeled after a prompt by Winter Tangerine that envisioned write a missing case report for something you have lost. So I will be sharing these missing case reports with you today of what we are missing or have lost during quarantine. Missing, craving surprises. Runaway? Yes. It chased itself down the street with no known aliases. I no longer expect nor want surprises, only a sure step against the earth. Any scars, marks, tattoos, or piercings? Only a line in its forehead from a needle scratch 10 years ago from sitting up too fast in bed when shadows flew in too close. Case number 081999. Missing, the pleasure that comes from the pressure of bodies against your own in the dark, bass pulsing, sweat sticking. Last seen at New Year's Eve, shrieking amongst its kingdom as it waved through the party. Any aliases? The feeling of your body next to mine, blanket, wrapping not unlike fog. Case number 08120002. Missing, trajectory. No one knows where we're going anymore, least of all the future. 5-year plans crumble into getting through the next 24 hours, each hour sifting through our hands like powdered sugar on top of freshly fried dough, oil absorbing each fleck into a thick paste. We stop and start, rusted joints waiting for oil that will never come. Standing still, we claim someone glued our eyelids shut, but we can clearly see the whites of our eyes bald with fear over what the next 4 years will bring. Missing, shame. My mother gave it to me and I lost it amongst the fire of the sun. It weighed down my kneecaps worse than heavy cream, whipped and frothed into a kiss, nursed into a knot, daubed against my collarbone where warmth bloomed, shame chain smoked impulsively into a cloud, condescended to guilt on its way out. Jewelry worn? simply 2 drops of sun hanging from its earlobes. This next poem is called Save What Dates. Tea timed next to the sink, drank with a spoon still clinking in mug. I try to piece together our lives with a needle carved from butter, melting in my hands, much like my face under your mouth. I'll leave you with this one last poem. It's responding to the last 4 lines of Sam Sachs's poem on prep or on prayer when I say pre-exposure prophylaxis. The last 4 lines say, you know, each new medicine trails our dead behind it like wedding cans. Listen, you can hear them now, can't you? Trials. I hear the cans ask, what do we learn from the dead? Our doctors, before they were doctors, crept into graveyards at night, unearthed bodies to dissect and slice into unclaimed flesh, lesson planned by autopsy. Every day, we're learning from our dead. If they're still infectious with rigor mortis, can they share their organs with the living? Walk a test tube, a genotype split with a second strain that couldn't kill alone, but rather intubated complicity down a larynx as systems shut down, no reset button to power back on. A sharp prevalence of the question, cause of death, natural or accident? What's the severity of this loss other than a magnitude of learning potential? Is the lesson to never take that lash falling on your cheek, the heat of freshly brewed tea against a sore lip for granted? We can't look in the rearview mirror, leaning into every new day, leaving trails of salt as cans drag through. We hear the cans. My name is Jenna Rod. Thank you so much for having me. And my book will be out May 2021 from Milk and Cake Press. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. If you're just tuning in, this is Dispatches from Quarantine. I'm Alexandra Kostoulis, and this is the San Francisco Creative Writing Institute project co-sponsored with the SF Public Library. We've got 4 poet laureates reading with us today, former and current. I think 2 of them were named poet laureate after sending us work. So they have good luck from Dispatches, has sent them good luck. Our next reader is one of the poet laureates. Georgina Marie is the current poet laureate for Lake County, California, and the first Mexican-American to serve in this role. Georgina sent in one of the early dispatches along with Dana that we published in Dispatches from Quarantine early on in the pandemic. Welcome, Georgina Marie.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thanks for having me. I actually thought I would read my dispatch, if that's all right, and then I'll follow it with my poem.
It was lovely. I hope you do.
Thank you. So this is Dispatch 11, and I'll follow with my poem, Cold Gin and a Pandemic. I'm writing this on Monday, April 27th, 2020, and I had to Google when the shelter in place in my town began. It was March 19th. The days have been blurring together so fiercely that I seem to forget when all of this began. 2 of my sisters often said that terrible things happen in 3s. My beloved cat Clyde passed away on February 18th. My estranged father passed away on March 18th, bringing up years of unresolved conflict, and now the shelter-in-place order since March 19th. There is always a pause in my writing when unsettling events occur. I'm human after all, and can't always be swept away by the romance of poetry, despite my hope that being a human and a poet can be interchangeable. On October 8th, 2018, I jotted down a note in my iPhone that read, "Seems like every time a new trauma hits, I can't bring myself to even read poetry. I don't know the psychology of it, but it makes me sad." This was after my sister died, my dog died, and I was evacuated from a wildfire. Writing poetry is my passion, but even reading a poem at that point in time made me sick to my stomach. But this time, the terrible threes made me feel different. It may be resilience built from the last round of devastations. It could be that some of the discomfort was balanced with the excitement of being appointed poet laureate in my county. It could be a sense of responsibility I have as I continue to work full-time for a nonprofit organization serving low-income families in need. Or it could be the impressive amount of poets and writers who are coming together from a distance during this time to continue supporting each other with online readings, workshops, or by posting poems and articles and pictures of cats and flowers on social media. We're all in this together. All of this combined keeps me going. Like many others, this period of time is offering me new days of self-reflection. I think about how loss has shaped me as a woman and writer, how these new losses in this new phase of my life will shape my personal evolution in months or years to come. How I want my long-term goals to happen fast, like publishing a full-length collection of my poems or submitting more of my poems to literary publications, or should I say being accepted by those publications. But if there were a time where goals and productivity could be put on hold and we can just be, it's now. We can grieve, we can panic, we can remain calm, we can laugh, we can cry, we can look forward to voting in 190 days for reasons I don't need to explain. We can stay busy or we can be leisurely. All of it is okay and all of it is valid. There is no wrong way to cope so long as it doesn't harm anyone. This is not to say we aren't also acting with kindness while thanking essential workers, thinking of our healthcare workers on the front lines working tirelessly, or taking a moment of silence for those who are losing their lives to this virus. So I've been trying to write in the margins, with my aim being to not place too much expectation on myself, reminding myself that it's okay to be productive, but it's okay to not be too. The best thing we can do is to take care of ourselves, and by keeping distant, if we have the privilege of doing so, we're taking care of others too. It's okay to work 8 hours in a day, then do absolutely nothing afterward, or go lie in the sun on the dining room floor with my dog and cat and read a few pages of a book. Or maybe to not even read, or to not write at all, but to lie on the couch with my animals and stare at the wall if I'm so inclined. Or write a sad poem and not feel any bit of shame or embarrassment for writing yet another sad poem, such as this one. Cold gin and a pandemic. A swig of fresh lime squeezed over ice. San Francisco's juniper gin with a garnish soothes the overwhelm of more bad news and sudden heat. What I learned at home today. The length of estrangement becomes short in comparison to the weight of regret. 100 more days of solitude, a poet's irony. Bare white walls wait with open hearts to catch our sighs. How much I miss my father now that he is dead. Toss back tonic water with an extra kick. Catch the sun warming the side of my face through the glass door into the dining room. Now a reflection of how many years have passed, how the idea of a father became a ghost, how a ghost haunted me into adulthood, how adulthood became a poem always in the works, how poems became home, how hard it is to live inside this one. Thank you so much. And I can't believe it's been almost a year since that dispatch was written.
No, that was a beautiful poem, and I'm sorry about your dad. Thank you for reading it, and the bravery to read that kind of stuff. Thank you. I love all your work. Let's keep it going. Dispatches from quarantine. I'm going to briefly share my screen, so you get a sense of our website. Anyone that's watching and is curious about it. Let's see. Usually we have a home page, but I changed it so that, oh, I guess it came back. I put all the, oh, something happened. Well, here's the web page, and it's basically we have different phases: shelter in place, the movement, the reopening, the surge, the lockdown 2.0, the vaccine, and these are just, you know, pictures I took around San Francisco. We probably could use some better ones. If you have any submissions and you want to send them to us, that would be great. You can just send us your dispatch here on the website. And then our blog for some has all of the submissions on there. We've got 50 up. So, and we're going in order. So they're going in order of the quarantine. And we started in April, or, you know, publishing them, and we sort of ended in December. And then we've still got more. So however you want to send them, there's no deadline. You're welcome. Our next reader is Dan Lingley. Dan Lingley is an SF-based comedian, writer, performer, and lover of everything fire truck related. And he thinks beaches are overrated. So without further ado, Dan Lingley.
Thanks, everybody. Great job, all the readers before. I wrote this in June 2020, and it's called My Pandemic Life. Frankly, I thought a global pandemic would be a lot more fun. This is the most boring worldwide health crisis ever. I always thought something that completely disrupts the world in every considerable way would be like The Walking Dead, going on missions of survival and adventures to save family and friends, while always being a little grimy and sweaty. But nope, all we do is sit around watching screens and being terrified of standing next to somebody. My daily mission of survival is going to Walgreens to buy gum. While not exciting or dangerous at all, I still bring my crossbow. It is Walgreens after all. It's frustrating to live in a time that is both boring and weird. I never associate boredom and weirdness. Those two adjectives exclusively cancel one another out. This is like having a talking dog, but the only thing the dog wants to talk about is soup. Everyone is drinking too much, posting way too much on social media, and watching too much news. Also, masturbation. I want to see my friends. When I see my friends, I immediately regret seeing my friends. What am I seeing my friends for? There's nothing to do and there's nothing to talk about. We just talk about how dull and frustrating life is. These conversations are dull and frustrating. In normal times, my friends and I had stories and experiences to exchange because we all had lives. We all lived lives. An exchange of stories and anecdotes about our daily lives is a good conversational foundation. Days don't really exist anymore, so who cares? Thursdays feel like Mondays, and there's no difference between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. There's no stories to exchange because none of us are doing anything. My reflections on my comfy new flip-flops isn't really a story that can sustain conversation. My most interesting story from the past 2 weeks is a brief altercation I got into with a woman at a burrito shop about our wildly different definitions of extra cilantro. I go for a lot of walks these days in my really boring neighborhood. There's nothing to look at or take in. There's no crazy people to watch and wonder about. There's just sidewalks and people avoiding each other. I don't really mind that, actually. Usually if someone crosses the street when they see me approaching, I take it personally. Now I just take it socially. Everyone is avoiding each other in a zigzag formation. It's like a terrible game of dodgeball, but no one ever wins and every person is a ball to be dodged. Everyone is so terrified of being outside. In this era, taking a walk is tantamount to losing your tether while on a spacewalk. I've named every tree on my walk to the Walgreens. In this time of confusion and uncertainty, I look to our authorities for information. I do so foolishly and without any positive feelings afterwards. The president is an idiot of almost impossible proportions. He speaks and behaves in a manner that suggests he can't possibly exist outside of Mad Magazine. He's like a general that gives long, rambling, poorly articulated soliloquies about strength and superiority during a war while his soldiers are being picked off by snipers on live TV. He's like a decrepit garbage can who sort of learned how to speak. His hand movements during his speeches are almost hypnotic if the hypnotist was an exquisitely stupid robot. He constantly moves his hands back and forth over the podium like an accordion player who doesn't know how to play the accordion or pronounce Minneapolis. Maybe the worst thing about the pandemic is the fact that he's here for it. Our media isn't doing anything to help us out. The media is like a 24-hour televised haunted house with attractive women and distinguished men leading us down hallways, plus sports and weather. The media exists solely to keep us afraid and fully aware of how bad things are. Yes, things are bad, but gee whiz, hasn't someone adopted a puppy lately? Has no Girl Scout hit her cookie quota? No one has a parrot that does a great Charles Barkley impression? Can we see something on the news that's positive? There has to be some positivity coming from all this tragedy. The air is cleaner, people are slightly nicer, traffic is almost non-existent. The reduction in traffic makes the pandemic a jaywalker's dreamland. Can the media please take pandemic lemons and report some pandemic lemonade? The face mask situation is controversial. I don't know why. Just put on a goddamn mask. It's not a big enough deal to fight about. Be angry with someone who doesn't like pickles or people who still wear cargo pants. Those are arguments that make sense. Eat your pickles, buy some chinos, wear a mask. No one loves wearing these masks. At the time, I had a very substantial beard. If outside I'm wearing sunglasses, and I use old school wired earbuds. None of these make wearing a mask any fun. Putting on and taking off my mask is like trying to remove spider webs from my face while underwater. Everything's getting tangled. My glasses fall off my face. My phone catches on fire. I hate wearing a mask, but I don't want to accidentally kill anyone's Nana. I was on a city bus last week and I realized I had forgotten my mask. The looks of hatred and disdain from the other passengers felt like a sunburn. I was reviled. I covered my mouth and nose with the top of my jacket like some kind of public transportation vampire. This is a terrible time and everyone's sad. People have died. We're all stuck indoors or on walks with friends where there's nothing to talk about, aside from how terrible things are. No one is happy and no one's doing anything. I'm more miserable than usual, and so are all of my friends. Time is frozen, yet we're all still getting older. That seems unfair, but it's where we're at. I feel like I'm in suspended animation, but I'm still losing my hair. Every day, to prevent my brain from turning to mush, I think of games to play. I've assigned personality types to all of my toes. Left ring toe is the one that calls when it's drunk just to argue, when really he's just projecting his own feelings of inadequacy. Right pinky toe is actually the reincarnation of Dom DeLuise, but he doesn't make a big deal out of it. I've taken to despising my roommate just to feel something, mainly because he performs Zoom karaoke shows at our dining room table, a designated common space in our lease. The fact that my signed lease was printed on a dollar store brand paper towel seems irrelevant. Still, don't do karaoke in a common space, or don't do karaoke. My pending eviction aside, my favorite game is to count everything in my bedroom of a certain color. It's therapeutic, kills time, and rests firmly at the bottom of the barrel of fun. From my desk chair, I can see 51 blue things. I am saving red for Wednesday and green for Friday. I want to space out the insane adrenaline rush of this game. I feel trapped and bored and looking towards a future that is going to be very strange, only rivaled by how strange now is. We live in a threatening time with leaders who have their heads so far up their asses they can actually check their own lungs for COVID. People hate mask wearers almost as much as the masked hate the maskless. We live in a time history will call the newest, stupidest civil war. Brothers torn apart over whether or not to wear a mask at a gas station. I can't wait for the Ken Burns documentary about this. Emotional footage of a dude in a Raiders jersey, maskless, calling a friend wearing a personalized SF Giants mask in a Safeway a sellout for wearing that mask. It will make for a fantastic documentary, especially with a sepia filter. That's it.
Thank you for reading. I was laughing and then I realized I was on mute, but I hope you saw that we were laughing. It's hard to read the room when you're doing comedy, as we've mentioned, but in Zoom, but
yeah,
I saw giggles. So just so you know.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was funny. And
Thank you so much, guys.
When you sent it, I didn't get the humor. I was like, oh, this person's serious about the crossbow. Taking it, I'm weird. I was like, well, everybody.
I'm tired of any kind of weapon projectile. I don't know crossbow. I don't know a gun. None of that. So yeah, I was kidding about that.
No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
But at the time I didn't know, yes, but it was to each their own. Okay, our next reader, I don't know if he's here, but he comes from far away, so it may be that there's a time difference. Nadaba Sabanda, are you here? And if so, please identify yourself or say something. Unmute yourself. Nadaba Sabanda. Okay, if he comes later, we'll slot him in. And if you're watching this, Nadaba, there's a Zoom that you should log into, and we don't see him in the room. So he published in dispatches. He comes from Zimbabwe, and it might be a time difference issue because I know it's 10 hours. I think it's 10 hours. They're 10 hours ahead, so it might have been a time thing. But if he comes back at a later point, he can jump in and read, no problem. You're listening to dispatches from quarantine. I'm Alexandra Kostoulis, and the editor of Dispatches, and this is the SF Creative Writing Institute's project, and in partnership, this reading is in partnership with the San Francisco Public Library. And I'd like to introduce our next reader, and her name is Jan Holiday. Jan Holiday has lived in San Francisco since 1988, an illustrator and a preschool teacher. She started writing 3 years ago.
Hi. Okay. So this I wrote from sitting in my back garden. It's the stay-at-home order. So she sat, legs crossed, under the willow tree, unseen, absorbing the sounds of here and now. The man 3 doors down came out on his upper deck with a false illusion that he was alone, invisible, sucked down in his own vortex, his shoulders hunched over, trembling. The pandemic's bony finger had stretched out and touched each being in some way. On the other side of the fence at her back, she heard the chicka-boom, boom of the boy who was practicing his drums. Boom, 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 chicka-boom. Pulsating joy, his brother played air guitar, youth's invincibility. She stretches her torso, leaning her head backwards, face up towards the warmth of the sun, like the resting cat on the top of the fence. Its deep, throaty purr rumbles through the air. He unfolds himself, arches his back before chasing a squirrel down the line of back fences. Next door, to her right, the high-pitched scream of a baby softens to the soothing lullaby hummed with love as mother hides her fraying edges. Dad is mowing the grass, filling the air with the sweet scent that draws in early summer. Do you know why snails make slime trails? Asks the 3-year-old, laying on the edge of the grass that has already been cut. It's how they find their way home. The dad laughs softly at the question and explanations of a 3-year-old. She could smell the charcoal of burning toast as the diagonal tirade flows out the kitchen window. You burnt the toast. You burnt the toast again. Who burns toast? Burnt toast and burnt bacon, the smells of childhood when it was her father's turn making breakfast before she'd go to school. Why do you always burn my toast? The old lady had dementia and could never remember putting the bread into toast or how many times she had actually toasted this single slice of bread. But he still expected her to make his lunch. That was her job. This old lady could not remember how many times she had toasted this single slice of bread or how many times this old shit had shouted at her. She only saw the young man that she had married last week. Hello. The shout came from the other side of the fence and brought her thoughts back to under the willow tree. She saw the wobbling top of his head rising up until she could see his eyes looking over the top of the fence. I didn't want to scare you, he laughs. I'm just trying to cut back the jasmine. The energetic tendrils were flailing in the breeze, trying to hook and twist to anything that they could capture. I got I've got to find something to do. He looked towards the base of the ladder that he was standing on, and his wife, who was holding tightly onto it. Isn't that right, honey? That's right, she called up over the fence. They had bought the house 6 months ago. They had gotten married 4 months ago, and they should have gone on honeymoon 3 months ago. Their bags were packed and everything, and they had arranged for the cat sitter. And just the day before they meant to leave for the airport, the travel ban was put in place. She liked them, although they were the new folks on the block. They fit it right in. She always felt lucky to live on this block, from the first day that she had moved in over 20 years ago and was the new folks on the block. She sat up and walked towards him as he snipped the jasmine to have almost a face-to-face conversation. Are you sure you don't want me to cut it from this side of the fence? It might be easier. No, it's okay, they answered in unison, then laughed. We're clearing the garden. We're clearing the garden a bit so that we can put the tent up, he added. They had decided that they couldn't go on honeymoon and they had to stay at home. They would give themselves the gift of mini home adventures. This weekend, they would put up the tent, make s'mores on their barbecue, sleep under the stars and pretend to be in a far-off desert island. She smiled to herself as she turned to walk away, thinking, I hope they don't mind the busy hubbub these gardens become at night when nighttime falls, a warren of wildlife. Her phone vibrated at the same time, singing out by the seaside. A reminder that lunchtime is over and back to work. She gathered up her things from where they sat on the grass and she walked up the stairs back inside to the temporary desk that she had set up. Oops, sorry, I've just dropped the last page that she set up. The temporary desk that she had set up in the kitchen, away from the not so quiet solitude of the garden to the virtual reality, this new world that she found herself in.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for reading. And I just wanted to congratulate all of our readers. You guys are doing a great job. And we have some, I just posted the next sort of batch of readers, and just so everyone knows what to expect. While you were reading, I got a text from my cousin who lives in a different state, who's like, we've been snowed in, we're trapped inside. I was like, you should tune in to YouTube, SF Public Library, your whole family can watch dispatches from quarantine. So hopefully my cousin's name is also Jorgos, just like our next reader, so serendipity. So hopefully Jorgos, you're listening. And our next reader is Jorgos Anagnastu. Let me read a little bit about him. Jorgos Anagnastu is a professor at the Ohio State University. He is the author of 2 poetry collections experimenting with the Greek and English bilingualism. Without further ado, Jorgos Anagnastu.
Thank you for having me. I will be reading an essay which I wrote in the summer of 2020. And the essay tries to bring together 2 urgencies of that period: the pandemic and the quest for racial justice. The perspective is one from an immigrant from Europe and an aging person who is classified as particularly vulnerable to the pandemic. I will be sharing the text with you, so you will have both the written word and the voice. So I will be doing this. And here we go. Those of us, the other diaspora collective. There are those of us who immigrated to this country with next to nothing and now find ourselves accomplished. The American dream is imprinted on our bodies. The endless labor, the immense overtime, the never-ending exhaustion. The sacrifices in our relentless, all-consuming investment in the work ethic. Those of us who arrived with almost nothing and have experienced socioeconomic mobility, the benefits that the social structure extended to us we intimately know. We were largely spared the specter of discrimination, the normative ones with minor scratches mostly, granted privileges exclusively reserved from immigrants from Europe. No one speaks about the multiple breaks we received, our collective secret. And those of us, successful immigrants, the fellow immigrants who achieved alternatively, we recognize. Highly qualified professionals who opted to live modestly rather than partake in cutthroat unethical practices, rather than play the game. Hardworking individuals excluded, even expelled from the ruthless labor market, devoted instead to non-glamorous, underpaid jobs. Independent researchers, freelance writers, artists, caregivers. Those of us. We acknowledge fellow immigrants, both those of the past and our contemporaries, whose work ethic paralleled ours, yet their successes were derailed by the political and the corporate establishment. By speaking up against social injustices, pioneers in defending democratic political principles, they paid dearly for rocking the boat, some with their lives. We honor Luis Ticas. Others, marginalized outcasts, we remember those persecuted by McCarthyism and those by a less sanctioned, but nevertheless insidious system. Those of us who had nothing, yet accomplished something, we whisper among ourselves about those things we so well know, our failures. All these great failures. We dare not confess even to ourselves, our triumphs, our silences, our quiet dreams. Those of us, the post-1970s Greek American immigrants, aging in the suburbs, aging, period. What was it all about, we ask? In the age of the pandemic, when questions of mortality press, the question forces itself, what was it all about? There is no ethnic story to represent us, no diaspora identity story either. In the age of heritage, sugar-coated ethnic stories outrage us. The pride in struggle and success exhausts us, ages us, so tiring, infuriating in its inattention on its refusal, in fact, to recognize how it harms people who have been struggling generation after generation with an eye on the prize to only be stepped on, degraded, killed by insidious systems. What to do? Our wrinkles look at each other knowingly. Us. What is next? Next to us and far away, others who made it differently, others the dissidents, others who resisted, others who were destroyed, others alternatives, others the forgotten people, non-normative others, Greek Americans of various colors, accents, styles, shades. Here, in Greece, in other diasporas, with those who are dehumanized, unfairly persecuted, in solidarity. Us, what is next, we know. To name not an identity, not a culture, but to assert a position. Speak historically about us, about others, about those in the past and those in the present. This speaking makes a collective, animates the other diaspora collective, an alliance of relevance. They work for this accomplishment, our words, our public stance, our directive. This doing, I would call a matter of substance, a badge of pride. There are those of us, others. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorgos Anagnastu. I'm sorry, I said your name with the wrong pronunciation. The one Greek on actually there's two Greeks on here. I mispronounced your last name, I apologize, but Jorgos Anagnastu, beautiful writing and beautiful essay about the diaspora. I think a lot of us are thinking about diasporas right now, and especially Greece is having its own, not related to this essay because it happened later, but it's having its own Me Too movement right now, which is hitting the press with the in their own entertainment and theater and arts industry. It's interesting. That's another interesting thing to notice. Okay, our next reader, without further ado, is Holly Hardy. Let me find my bios. I've navigated away from them. Here they are. Holly Hardy is a poet, educator, and award-winning author of How to Take a Bullet and Other Survival Poems. She's also an instructor for San Francisco Creative Writing Institute, and she runs the popular writing series Saturday Night Special. Without further ado, Holly Hardy.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's a pleasure to be here with all these amazing luminary writers. I'm going to read 3 poems. The first 2 are dispatch number 37 from Dispatches from Quarantine. A murmuration of starlings. In the cities, protesters break quarantine and windows, expressing moral outrage like a choreographed ballet. At 45, your mother asks you to move home so she can keep you safe. I take all day to summon the courage to swim across the river where the late afternoon sun warms the rocks. A mother's job is to worry because we cannot escape the river. We cannot escape the president. His omnipotent lies and beguiling teeth gleam like wolves in the Twitter light. Hark the darkening view from my apartment, television blue skyline, rearranging a racial hierarchy at hospitals dressed in death. Water is stronger than rocks. Time's carving knife ripples and recedes in its own image, patient, a river-shaped handprint. At midnight, the landlord is summoned to clean up mountains of cardboard boxes so they cannot be burned by protesters like us. We enjoy the sight of his labors from behind closed shades. Today, a rocket launches 2 astronauts into space, escaping gravity, but not quarantine. On the ground, a handsome reporter tears up and turns away. In another life, I wonder what kind of bird I might be, built for speed or distance, solitary or gregarious. I want to join a migration, a murmuration of starlings, an acrobatic aerial display. On the drive to the river, we play I'm going on a trip. You bring an anvil and a parachute because the laws of attraction supersede the laws of physics. In the morning, the scent of you, coffee and earth, the promise of rain, the weight of your body next to mine means you are still here, means I am not alone. Slow motion upon a pallid landscape. Days slide nameless into weeks. Tuesday tantamount to Saturday. We wake up in fragments, hours later than we meant. The sound of hammering is loud at the epicenter of change. We linger in dreams, follow kinks in the hose, pick fruits and flowers that don't belong to us. Happiness resembles a fickle, flitting bird. Because quarantine is equivalent to quagmire, we build a new vocabulary for togetherness, a private lexicon for latchkey adults, a grist of sodium chloride. We eat chocolate at midnight because feelings are so emotional. We learn to breathe in protest through our own homemade voluntary bindings, but forget to hydrate. We let wind quench our thirst, cooling and tangling. Everywhere light lands lush with texture along the forbidden trail. Waves burst around us, around rocks like wings. Poison oak blooms at our elbows, but we will not be warned. We have come to build. This last one was from the very beginning of the pandemic, and it was published in Migozine, Staying Home. I dreamt I was packing a bag with the names of all the things and all the people I had lost. The names were scrawled on scraps of paper, scattered across the floor, and the bag was already too heavy to carry. Awake in the hammer of storm, we cannot experience wetness, only hot and cold, only pressure. I motion you closer. In our collective apocalypse, we can't help reaching for comfort. We can't stop touching our faces. Streets are quarantine empty, a new kind of winter, or maybe they're just lonely. I read a study says sometimes people think they are lonely when really they're just cold. So we devise a blanket drive for the brokenhearted. While I wait, my eyes are getting old, and so are my hands, my hair, my skin. Maybe my American dream doesn't have a house or kids. Maybe this bridge is enough. This bridge and these writers, this community, these friends and this rent-controlled apartment, this weather for motorcycles, this motorcycle, and you? Blackbirds burst across a silver skyline like musical notes. Golden melody of melted sunlight, city silent in silhouette. Skyscrapers still break the horizon. Soft haze mutes the low-slung sun like a lampshade. I keep trying to capture this bridge, like a butterfly migration, like gratitude. What we prioritize is what we manifest. I scrawl your name on a scrap of paper. I keep trying to keep you closer for a moment. I pack a bag, motion of wings and wishing. I keep trying to define what home means, place or person, with animal bones and ash, carapace or carcass, apotheosis of city, city heartbeat, city girl. Thanks.
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to take a brief intermission, very brief, and we'll come back at 3. But in that time, I'd like you to think about what you want to write. I want you to write your dispatch, write your poem. What was the thing that kept you from, what kept you from going insane during the pandemic? What's your solace? What is the thing that keeps you going? What is the thing that makes you angry? What is the thing, I don't know, you decide, write whatever you want about the pandemic. If you want, or if not, use the time to get up, get a drink, stretch, and then we'll come back at 3 and I'll take over from there and read my piece. And then we've got a really great lineup and coming up. Sort of Holly is taking us into the poetry sort of section, which is, we've got a lot of poets coming up who are also amazing. So I hope you'll stay tuned. And so I'm going to post a prompt, just write about the pandemic. What's keeping you sane through the pandemic? And feel free to share it in the chat as well. Oops. Hi, welcome back. Jorgos texted me, or I think you direct messaged me and said what's been keeping him sane is reading, writing, daily walks, the pre-COVID routine, now in a radically different emotional state of mind. Yes, I know, me too. I think that someone was calling it their daily sanity walk. I think it's a blog I read that the writer was calling it their daily sanity walk. And I think that is helping, taking walks. Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. I'm Alexandra Kostoulis. This is Dispatches from Quarantine, based on our blog, dispatchesfromquarantine.co. It's a project of the San Francisco Creative Writing Institute. And we're being broadcast on YouTube Live through the SF Public Library page. I'm here to introduce us to the second half. I decided I would start off the second half because it's easiest to introduce oneself in such a way. I'm Alexandra. I'm the founder of SF Creative Writing Institute and the editor of Dispatches from Quarantine. Thank you for sticking around. I'm going to read you my second dispatch, and I wrote it in April 9th. I didn't know what this would be. I just sort of was writing into the night. So here it is. Dispatch 2. We knew something was up when things were starting to get weird at the grocery store. This line keeps popping into my head, or a variant of it, like someday I'm going to be old, an old grandma telling my grandchildren about this time, and they will listen to my storytelling, mouths agape, thinking, what a strange and distant era their crazy old yaya came from. I don't know why this scenario keeps popping into my head, but it does. My own yaya in Greek, was a survivor of the 1918 flu epidemic. Born in 1911, her parents were Greek immigrants from the rough, craggy mountains of the Peloponnese region of southern Greece, right by Kalamata, where the olives came from, and Sparta, where the Spartans came from. Her own father was an immigrant, a young man at the time, and he was a cook at the Garrison Inn in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And her mother, Anna, was a clam shucker. When you go to Newburyport, they have a historical store, but none of the Greek immigrants are written into the history. It's just smiling white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, like the Pilgrims and the Plymouth Rock type things. You can buy scrimshaw there. It used to be on real whalebone, but now they make it on plastic because of the ecological reasons. My grandmother and her younger sister worked at a textile and shoe factory before child labor laws were in effect. Except my grandmother was too slow, so she started a business of selling candy bars to the factory workers, probably other children, for a nickel apiece. She ended up getting off the factory line and expanding her business, but that's another story. I take after my grandmother in temperament. I am also too slow, and I am also physically quite delicate. Being an adjunct professor at several schools at the same time almost broke me when I was doing it. I had a terrible fall down some stairs in my early 30s, and it took me 18 months to recover. And I decided after that to take a break. Somewhere in that time, I started my own creative writing school and formed the Institute. It's like the candy bar business, like my grandmother started as a child in a lot of ways. And I haven't really understood that until now. Now with two small children, I don't know if I could go back to teaching composition or ESL like I did, especially in the pandemic. I don't know if I have it in me. I respect the work though, you never know. Trying to build my stamina back up bit by bit. This whole stay-at-home mom thing was never something I imagined I would be doing. It's so freaking hard. The quarantine just makes it harder in some ways. I keep wondering when I will fully slip into my life as a writer now that I finally know how to write. I decided that once my oldest started preschool in the fall would be my time that my career would really soar. But we were rejected from the fancy preschool near our house in the neighborhood that my family has lived in for 50 years. All of my fantasies of pushing the stroller there and walking home with a fancy latte in the cup holder in luxe exercise pants and a crisp wool pea coat to sit at the local cafe at a computer and write my novel into the fog until 3 p.m. have been dashed. It was a great and fun fantasy though. I don't have any fancy exercise pants, by the way. I just have the 8-year-old Target ones, but in my fantasy, they were fancy. By the way, those Target ones have been the most comfortable of the pandemic, I have to say. I love them. After getting rejected from the preschool, I went to watch the sunset at Ocean Beach in my car and listened to the news of the coming pandemic. And I cried, which I don't do very easily. I'm pretty stoic. And then I was crying as I took a picture of the sunset and I posted it to Facebook and talked about how disappointed I was about the preschool. And one of my childhood friends, a mom who was walking away from a difficult marriage, comforted me. She basically said that everything happens for a reason and that I wouldn't want my kid at that fancy school anyway if they didn't want me. And I would see in why this is good in the long run. In fact, many moms comforted me. The moms all knew what it meant to not have your kid in preschool, what it means to not have your kid in school, what it means for one's career. But 2 weeks later, the city shut down due to coronavirus. All of my mom friends are being expected to work from home and take care of their kids at the same time. All the burden is falling on the moms. Oh yeah, and they're supposed to still pay for their expensive preschools and daycare centers during the epidemic in order to hold their spots. What kind of shit is that? I'm the only one who can say it now because I don't have a spot to hold on to. Fuck that. There, I said it, what everyone is thinking. Right as the shelter in place happened, one of my writing clients, a midwife and an amazing poet, had these homemade tinctures and teas that she was selling to her clients. I saw her advertising them on Instagram. I bought one. It's a reishi mushroom tincture and it has antiviral properties, an antiviral tea. She left them for me and I went and picked them up. I paid her online because social distancing. When I took them home, I got a flash in my mind of my grandmother. The story that was passed down to me is that she survived the 1918 flu epidemic because her poor immigrant parents had these tinctures that her father made, tinctures full of special herbs. My great-grandfather was a medicine man, a healer. His mother was a doctor. His wife, my great-grandmother, was a midwife. They made these tinctures for wellness, or I think they called them tonics. My grandmother was a small child at the time, the eldest of 5 sisters. The story goes that her father gave the tinctures to all the Greek immigrants in Newburyport and the surrounding areas, and they all survived the flu epidemic because of the tinctures that my great-grandfather made. The main sadness of his life was that he never got them up to north to Maine to his sister, and she fell ill and died. And he died also later in an accident at the factory, tragically. My great-grandmother lived to 97 though, and my grandmother to 99. I hope to live a long time. This first weekend of the quarantine, I found out that my husband had been exposed to the coronavirus at work. We found this out after I picked up the tincture. I spent the first 2 weeks of quarantine silently shitting a brick, drinking the tincture and the antiviral tea, making avgolemeno soup, and bracing myself just in case any of us got sick. So far, nobody in my family has gotten it. Luckily, we are all okay. Last week, I found out that somebody who works at the Whole Foods in SF has it. Glad we don't shop there because that parking lot is too aggressive on a regular day, let alone in COVID times. As the social fabric breaks down a bit, like the women 2 and 3 generations before me, I realize I am falling back on folklore and family. I am falling back on my roots. I am falling back on stories. And at the end of the day, stories are what is settling me. And I am still here, spry, in the middle of the night, drinking my chai to vunu tea at the kitchen table and stealing the time to write. The end. Thank you for listening. And introduce our next reader for Dispatches from Quarantine. Next reader is Nicole Hanaris. Nicole is an English teacher at a SF high school, and she has a PhD candidate in women's spirituality at the California Institute of Integral Studies. Nicole Hanaris, take it away.
Hi. So, wait, am I still muted? Okay, good. It's an interesting time to be a high school teacher, especially at the high school I teach at. This one's called Looking for Light. How do we find light when there seems like there is no light to create from? How can we unsee what we have seen? Men carrying the Confederate flag on Capitol Hill, wearing t-shirts that boasted Auschwitz death camp. Don't tell me how even the Swatch store in Union Square was looted last summer. Don't mock why anyone would want to steal a swatch. Why not? As James Baldwin tells us, the devil found his work long ago. Soundbite after soundbite, image after image. 1989 still haunts me. The same year, Do the Right Thing was banned in all movie theaters in Monterey County except for one on a Tuesday night. And I couldn't see it because I had school the next day. What did ever happen to a dream deferred? What did we expect? I knew. I tried my best. I worry it is not enough. It will never be enough. I have been exploding too. The photos from last summer's looting showed teenage girls' arms filled, stepping out from shattered windows, because sometimes glass needs to be broken. Because we all also saw an orange tic-tac goblin with a horned comb-over fire tear gas and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters to have a photo op with a Bible in front of a church he rarely attends. Because we all also saw the children in cages, just like we all heard him say, grab him by the pussy. We all saw, we all heard. What are the numbers of how many unemployed? What are the numbers of how many unable to pay rent or mortgages, much less provide food for their families? The youth needed us yesterday, and now they are exploding, teaching us. Because it is the same old Basquiat showed us 40 years ago when he was a teenager. HIV was not the gay cancer, just like COVID-19 is just not just the flu. 400,000 are dead. Oops, 500,000. It hasn't even been a year. I did not need to watch the 8-minute video of George Floyd's murder. I knew what happened, what always has happened. I have read the transcript of what he said while he was dying. In my office is a giant frame poster of Langston Hughes. All summer I asked him what he thought about things. Today is January, a new year. My students and I listened to Amanda Gorman read her poem about looking for light while climbing that hill. For homework, I've asked them to tell me what they think. And I dedicate that poem for Jenny Lim, who came in and talked to my students and kept it real a couple weeks ago. That was really awesome.
That's beautiful. Thank you for reading it. Really good job. I'm just going to post the next group in the chat, just so everyone sees. And if Fisa Abbas, if you're here, please make yourself known. I don't see you in the reading, but you're in this group, and I know you're logging in from far away. But our next reader is Kim Shook. Kim Shook is the 7th Poet Laureate of San Francisco Emerita, which means she was the recent Poet Laureate and her term just ended. She has published 7 poetry books, and she also runs the series The Fire Thieves. Without further ado, Kim Shook, she's been doing tons of quarantine poems, I think 1 a day. So I'm looking forward to hosting you and hearing some.
Thank you for having me. First of all, this is the month of bones for my people, where we sort of come over memories, and there's been an event that's been taking place since quarantine started in various places, and it's called the socially distanced powwow, because there are ceremonies that have to take place, but they can't really take place because we can't go out and dance together. So that's part of what appears in this. Building water from first principles, we've called the bones, called a song, another song. The ravens from up the hill drop pieces of evergreen. They arrange the joyful things in every corner. This is the cautious edge. We stand where the redwoods were, where the roots spoke one and another. And as the singing begins, our neighbor child sends soap bubbles up the street. The rain wind winds along the twisting wave. Knife tip catches just under the skin. I can hear the voices outside trying to solve the world like a puzzle. a fabric of counterfactual musings and fear. The feral cat comes when I call him, runs eagerly across the street. He doesn't eat the food I put out, just stands next to the heater vent, paws meeting the floor. Because scar tissue is tough, the knife tip catches. The drum rattles bells, the way of singing, singing to the universe with feet, with smoke, with community hearts. Who vanished this week? I'm a drumhead made of scars. The first front step shifts underfoot. My neighbor runs, shape-shifted in the night. The water runs under the sidewalk, under the street, dances a West Coast prayer to the scars that run like water under my skin. This one's a little more direct. I need a hug. We're 6 feet apart and masked. You are as often a self-folding model. You are as often brittle looking. We don't hug. We are 8 feet apart and masked, walking. We don't hug. We are 1,500 miles apart. You have no electricity, no water. You are out of food. I begin to panic, but I don't mention it. Thank you for having me.
That was beautiful. I'm sorry for the person 1,500 miles away with no water and food. And thank you for reading. You're an amazing reader. And if anyone wants to follow Kim Shook, she has been publishing on her Facebook, I believe, her poet Facebook page, a quarantine poem every single day. She's got like hundreds of them and they're all beautiful. If someone finds it, the link, please post it in the chat. Our next reader is Adriana Macias. Oh no, sorry, Andres Cordoba. I skipped you. I apologize. It's Andres Cordoba. Andres Cordoba, welcome. He's a Massachusetts-born poet. He likes Charles Simic and thinks heat is a human right. Perfect segue. Without further ado, Andres Cordoba, welcome.
Hi. I don't know if I can't see myself, so I hope I'm being seen.
Let me remove my spotlight so I can, there we go.
Okay, I just want to say thank you first off for Dispatches for publishing one of my poems, which I won't be reading today, but it's a very, very nice opportunity. It's a very big honor. Yeah, it's very cool. So I'll be reading 2 poems. They're called Time Theft and When a Cop Eats the Food is Nostalgic for the Outside. So here's the first one, Time Theft. Our God sits in the cosmic diner, facing the bell door, and every time the bell rings, it flinches. A dirty city bird seizes. A Wall Street savant whistles on down from the top floor. These things flow 2 ways, towards and away. It all depends on whether you're willing to follow. Whether you have the wherewithal to know moving after, alongside something can leave you and it forever parallel. God is a tweaker, or maybe God is withdrawals, or maybe God is a leathered face missing their child. No matter though, it is eye-bagged and its cup is empty. Its shirt is ill-fitting and it has been waiting on a sandwich for eternity. It cradles its brutal head in its palm and tears sugar packets small, and when it pours them every which way, someone you never knew dies slowly and without mercy in what we call a blizzard. God calls it a reason to tip extra. It keeps its hard hat on the table for luck because even it is superstitious, humble in its motions like the desperate house guest. It has stayed too long. It has a job to get to. There will be consequences in waiting to be fed, but God must stay. If not out of hunger, then just for the muted warmth that watching the cook at the grill gives it. Work, both the cheapest thing in the entire universe and the entirety of a moment. Everything from the task of wood being chopped to the axe that kills the laborer, it sees work in all its permutations, believes rest to be an act that is sacred. Our God sits in the cosmic diner, flinching, filching free cups of coffee, facing the exit. It is loitering for this eternity. It is hoping that it can just outwait this storm, that it can then return, that if it just watches, sits here real still and real low, then no one will remember that it is everything, and everything forever disappearing like a tired head being pulled free from a work shirt collar, like the everything that fills the growing, slow unfolding heart of a crumpled dollar. Little earned glories, blessings we send ourselves, the ways we make do while we await this divine order. All right, so that's the first poem. And this is the second poem, When a Cop Eats, the Food is Nostalgic for the Outside. I think cops grasp their shoulders, strutting stiff-legged and spit-lipped because they believe they are captains. Captains are, or were, men of light fingers. Legend claims they could rest 2 tips to the coming surf and raise them up without even a divot. I've never seen that, but sometimes I see holes in the city, and I wonder if they are born from destruction or purpose. Watch man declare himself vacuum, and then watch vacuum declare itself man. I think cops want love in the same way cows dream of the beyond. That is to say, a cow can know its fears, but it can never learn its song. In New York, we don't say thank you for your service. We open subway gates for the homeless. There are no handouts unless you want one, and if you want one, you're given lustrous little metal to place your bad days into, and a stupid little smirk that you hold where a scream would otherwise go. Time, a fat, round thing, has blood and veins, and the dust is its flesh. Since learning I lived in a living thing, I learned better than to expect simple order. There are many beasts holding many long smudges in their churning bowels, and when I get too high from the smell of fall, I began to see how I'm more river than man. I am a sea of still wrong named color, and I float in from a great expanse, so great that it felt like an illusion when I first bloomed. How we never truly leave once we enter a room. I think cops sleep at night by imagining exhaustion as their burden. They retell themselves stories never written. They chew drugs hard, and the taste is bitter, like it is for us all. When a cop dreams, he is not just right, he is gospel. When a cop eats, the food is nostalgic for the outside. When a cop is, he is lonely. And he looks to other cops and asks, are you lonely? And the other cops ask, why the long thought? And maybe he says, I don't know. As a boy, I saw a man once, and he was tall. And now no one is tall anymore. Everyone is small, and I hate the way they look at me. Thanks. So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. These readers have been great, and it's been a pleasure to be reading alongside them.
Wow. Are you in Massachusetts right now or New York?
New York.
Oh, you beautiful poet. I'd send us more. You have beautiful work, and it gave me chills. I loved your work, and thank you for reading.
Thanks so much.
Okay, and if you look in the chat for people who are logged into the Zoom, there's a lot of favorite lines. And now no one is tall anymore. It felt like an illusion when I first bloomed. Great. Okay. Okay, our next reader is Adriana Macias. Adriana Macias is an educator and writer who lives in the East Bay, East San Francisco Bay with her family. Welcome, Adriana.
Thank you. I feel really humbled to be reading with everyone here. I'm just going to read my submission to Dispatches. It's called The Language of Books, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Carmen woke up in a bad mood today and spent the rest of the day finding some fault in everything and everyone. The shelter-in-place policy in our county has caused drastic changes in my 4-year-old's life. I spent half the day dealing with tantrums. I had to put her in multiple timeouts in order to give her time to adjust her behavior. Also, I needed to give myself some space before I said or did something I might regret. No hugging her grandparents, no holding hands with her best friend. These changes have not been easy. Carmen often tells me, I feel lost, and I have too many thoughts and feelings, Mama. I don't know what to say or do. These feelings and thoughts are overwhelming enough for an adult. How can I expect an observant 4-year-old to deal with these emotions? It drives me crazy. I can't give her what she needs during those hard moments to prevent frustrations escalating into tantrums. But now it's bedtime. I love you for always, and I'll like you always, Mama, says Carmen as she snuggles hard against my chest. I feel the warmth of her breath as she rubs her face into my body. It feels as if she is almost pleading for my body to envelop her. Tears well up in my eyes as I recognize her words from Robert Munch's Love You Forever. I have always encouraged Carmen to try and describe her emotions or thoughts to me as best as she can. This way I can help her understand what she is feeling and try to help work through them. Over time, I gleaned why this book always brought out tears or hard snuggles after the book was finished. She fears being alone, especially since shelter-in policies took effect. Carmen has become really attached to me. Being with Mama brings her the reassurance she craves. Mama is her constant in a world that seems confusing and scary. She believes the love mother and child demonstrate to each other in Munch's book is like the love we share together. Love You Forever gave her the language to express how she feels at this moment. The fact she used these words to express her feelings to me brings me close to tears. I stroke her back gently as I fight back the tears, rocking us in the rocking chair, knowing this will give her comfort. I'll like you for always. I'll love you for always. Forever my baby you'll be, I reply. I can feel Carmen's body relax as she hears these words. I hear her let out a deep sigh of relief as the tension leaves her body. Relief washes over me. The weight of the day is melting away, leaving us alone in a dark, cozy room holding on to each other. Fears, tears, and sadness are gone. I hear nothing but the sound of my child's breathing as I continue to rock us. All that is left is my baby and me. Love You Forever allowed us to say what we could not throughout the day. I need to go to bed, Mama. I look down to see a sleepy pair of eyes and warm smile staring up at me. Okay. I kiss her on the forehead. When she is settled, I cover her in the mountain of blankets she loves to sleep in. I kiss her again and say, I love you to the moon and back. Sam Bratney's Guess How Much I Love You is a perennial favorite for Carmen. She has always loved rabbits, but something about a parent bunny with a baby bunny really appeals to her. Often, she reenacts scenes of the book with me and her dad, telling us, we are the Nut Brown Hair family. Carmen continues to smile and quietly replies, Mama, I love you to the moon and back too. Good night, little one. I smile as I give her one last kiss on the forehead. Good night, Mama. Her eyes close slowly. The language she has created from using books is a unique one that she will use to build a solid foundation to continue crafting more complex words, to explain her thoughts more in depth to me. Sometimes it's the language of books that conveys our meaning when our own words fail us. Thank you.
Beautiful. I loved it. And very nice to read at the library, since it's the business of books and the language of books as well. Thank you, Adriana. Our next reader is Aquila Lewis. Aquila is an award-winning poet, author, and journalist, and artivist. She uses poetry as a catalyst for healing. She talks about personal topics such as homelessness, religion, identity, women's empowerment, and social justice in her poetry. And her collection of Stop Hurting and Dance is published by Puccino Press. Aquila, take it away.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Aquila Lewis Ross, and thank you for this opportunity to be able to share all the different crazy things that I have been going through. I want to give a shout out to a fellow poet, Nicole Hanaris, who was actually there, I guess maybe 2 weeks before the quarantine shelter in place. I needed somebody to talk to and and she was the first person that answered the phone when I was talking about my trauma-filled experiences when I was in California. I'm going to share, I'm going to have to go off screen because my poems are in another area. I'm going to share with you some poems that I guess is dear and true to the heart. I Robot is the name. I Robot Again is the name of the poem. My daughter is 3 years old as well, and one of the poet that was right before me was talking about her experience with her baby. I have a 3-year-old who likes to watch cartoons, and there's a cartoon on PBS called Pinkalicious, and one of the characters were, I guess her name was a Robota. Was a robot that was malfunctioning, and I guess when I was watching this episode, this poem I guess came to my heart, my spirit. So I'm glad you guys can't see me do these expressions. Beep, beep, powering up, powering down, beep, beep. You're not allowed 6 feet. The command to practice social distancing, you must shelter in place because touching anything might be the end of the race. I risk it all to see my baby laugh and play at the neighborhood park. But even parks are banned. So we peek behind the curtains to see who's out. We, extroverts, practice a new indoor sport, creating schedules to have a valid routine. I watch her scatter her toys over wooden floors, and that's okay. I wonder if God whispered to the birds the secret, what the world needs now. I wasn't taught how to love from afar. I wasn't taught how to love at all. So I remain stuck in desire, longing to defy gravity, longing to do what must be done. This closing in isn't good for all. Those beaten, black, and blue. Some babies need space to grow away from the perps. There isn't enough hand sanitizer, lotions, and brushes, and blushes to cover sin thrice removed. And they can't call 911 because there's not enough medical supplies to save us all. Who can save us? God, please save us. Will you save us? We are rotten. Uh-oh. We've ruined our world and she's dying. The levees can't hold the tears anymore. Let the enslaved be free. Beep, beep, beep. And this next one is called Take Your Medicine. Take your medicine this time so you'll know what to do next time. There's no time to panic. This isn't that fake news you heard so much about. The baby still needs to be fed. He's watching how you move and groove within the times we are in. Her smile is proof. You can rest assured that everything will be all right because you've been here before, remember? That fire you ran away from as it cleansed the earth, displacing, rebuilding, and replacing plans. You can't see it now, but your blessing will come. But for now, it's a time for testing, a race to prove who is really fit. Not all can make it across the finish line. Somehow, folks have forgotten. There's no negotiating your fate. When your number is called, you will answer. It's a time for resting, if you can. The homeless and unhoused are your teachers. Ask them. The babies are your leaders. Follow them, because they know the answers. And Mama Earth has the medicine to heal broken bodies, broken hearts, broken minds, broken friends, broken loves. Some will finally pick up that big book, searching for what it says. Remember when you put it away on timeout or for safekeeping? There It was, buried in piles of boxes. You promised you'll come back to it someday. Well, the time is finally here. When the waters flood, sickness rushes in, demanding, needing change. Disasters teach lessons, helping remember what made you fall in love and what friendships and kindness really looks like. So take your medicine, rest, and get ready. Because after this, if there's a next time, you'll know exactly what to do. My name is Aquila Lewis Ross. I am also a journalist, and I'm posting to you my poems that have been also published within Oakland Voices. You guys can follow my story along the way. Thank you guys so much, and be well.
Thank you, Aquila Lewis Ross, everyone. Our next reader, Melissa Oliverion, is the author of A Field Guide to Autobiography and numerous chapbooks. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Melissa lives in Northern California, where she manages the Ukiah Library, curates the Loba reading series, and serves as the 2021 to 2023 Poet Laureate of Ukiah. Melissa Oliverion, you're up.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, for inviting me. And thank you to all of the readers. Wow, it's really an honor to be among such amazing poets and to hear everyone's perspectives on this strange time that we're all living through. And this is a great opportunity for us to reflect on almost a year now, right? Of this craziness we were all part of. I'm gonna read one poem that was actually the poem that was published in Dispatches from Quarantine, because it's kind of a long one, and it's sort of a departure from the work that I typically do, which tends to be shorter. This is a list poem, and I decided to write it after an exercise of trying my damnedest to write gratitudes every day during the first 6 months of the pandemic. And so this is a compilation of those gratitudes that I wrote in an effort to stave off depression and frustration and anxiety while working full-time as the library branch manager at the library itself, and then also raising our son, who's almost 14. His name is Phoenix. Gratitudes during a pandemic. Good air quality today, a house and a job, simplified hysteria, kitten antics, no fights today. Enough money to pay the bills right now. Warm bed, glad I'm not a tool bureaucrat. Family blue sky, no pressure to leave the house. Healthy now, new faucet, imaginal cells, laughs with family. I got the taxes done, wrote a stanza. Good day at work, I'm healing. Phoenix got some sleep. Trudy gave us handmade masks, danced to Hamilton, protective nervous systems, no housework, thanks to my husband. Making warm milk for bedtime, slept in. Phoenix sang, breathe with me. Diagnostic relief, hit my step goal, hugs and a power walk. Having a calm down plan, wild sky. A handwritten letter from Anthony. Kevin put up the new patio lights. Making French toast, attempts at letting go. Day off, melatonin. Hildy sleeping under my dresses. Had 15 minutes alone. Kevin killed the Black Widow. 5 minutes of wilderness. Minneapolis Police Department was disbanded. 15 years together. Bee sting. Hashtag no filter work talk. Family protest sign making. Today we marched. Dog belly. Drinking tea in the yard. My back stopped hurting. Permission to put up the trampoline. Hike by the river. Vietnamese takeout. Baldwin. Sunset over the mountain. Audrey Lord. Grateful that Nona died peacefully. Grateful we're not reopening the library yet. My mom. Learning to play the ukulele. Taking a knee in solidarity. Teaching my son. Gratitude for the protesters in Portland. Hope and gratitude for fungi and mycelia. Vanilla milkshakes, soft-boiled eggs, memories of my grandmother. Basic needs met. Can walk in my neighborhood without being perceived as a threat. Grace, wisdom, and grit. Stand-up comedy. The cicadas that triggered me. Unemployment check. Family time and nachos. Lichen. Gypsy of the forceful meow. Mutualistic symbiosis. 3-day weekend ahead. Making breakfast. Kevin dyeing my hair. Morning hike with Phoenix. Perseverance. Redwoods. We are safe at home tonight as fires ravage around us. Rose gelato. Poltergeist the musical. Survive the winding drive. No headache today. Air quality improving. End of the world birthday paleta. Being okay with failure. Everything is in everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Nice to remember gratitude in such a time, and a good practice. Our final reader is Tongo Eisen Martin. Tongo Eisen Martin is the lucky eighth poet laureate of San Francisco, and the curator and publisher of the New Black Freighter Press. And he has won a slew of poetry awards and published 2 books of poetry, one under City Lights. And welcome, Tongo.
Right on. Good to see everybody and hear everybody. Grip my heart tighter, Lord. Help me write on this sleeve. Like listening to Nina Simone later in life, the poet takes over for his former self. The secret to writing poems is to not deflect. If you do not know anything fretted about the color blue, don't go calling yourself a child at heart. If you never improvise an elevator ride, don't go calling yourself in need of prayer. Grace be to gang tattoos. A Reagan meeting adjourns and modern plant life begins, along with dry out-of-body insight, strange fake forest, and a poor person's bird atrium, bark around the Mississippi mixtape, a carceral state mythology of a factory's first black chaplain. Rotted food staring at a child, the minor progressions of revolution, drumming Molotov fields 3/4 in a floor stain staring as well, white children selling a child. I mean, I was there the night that San Francisco disappeared. Think of me when the sun dies, half man on scratch paper, half pickpocket with flailing arms, double-fisted. Alabama in my Paris. I'm an alcoholic in search of history books. Ruining the light rail in search of history books. I'm limping to poetry, along with the cast of halves adjacents, a slave deck, blossom, sweet baby Easter, blood, maybe a loss of crossroad, along with unprovable music theory. The poem turns into absolute political failure. You know, not for nothing. The way you all like to blame the devil for every fallen intellectual, every repassed fist fight, for every 28 hours in Hurricane America, blame him for every ballot burning, for every shallow pot pan and murder man, for every government plant, sloppy musician and federally flagged artist, for every floor plan of capitalist emotive geometry in private school, private anthem, for every kid in the cave. The way you all blame him, the devil must be in the sky too. Eyes lowered in the land of the blind, a mumbler with a gun. I am the worst of your weapons, Lord. Won't you put a space heater in my grave? Fast cash smuggled through my infant torso. I arrive smiling. Call, check, cash, and spot. Seal my eyes, hearing voices, but none of them sing to me. I am lucky to be a metaphor for no one. washing my face with the memory of water, my back to the edge of the chessboard. I mean, I'm settling into a petty arrest record with my face laid flat on an apartment kitchen table. Mississippi linoleum begins, government plans braiding together breathing tubes. A Greek philosopher takes the path of least resistance. The Bronze Corporation age dying, Citizen Council, rest haven, cultural white nationalism. In boardrooms, they ask if county line skin can be churned directly into cornflakes. A Senate special chain gang mines our neighborhood for evidence of continent unity, makes a mess of the word kin, makes a war report out of a family secret chord progression, makes white people geniuses. Lynch mob freaks rehearse their show tunes in the courthouse walls they take for mirrors, rehearse for a president's pat on the head, a pat on the head they take for audience laughter, a lot of sirs in the soup, a lot of speed, treated ink-stained teeth, write themselves a grin, imperialist speechwriter grins, boil over in my ink-riddled mind, a non-future, dripping with real people. I mean real people, not poem people. A street with no servant somehow, soul singer somehow in the West, constellation eternity, or the poor man's fish order is half of a spirit or husk of a messiah. Religious memorabilia made from the wood of a prison farm fence for sibling domestic colonies and non-for-profit Tuesday meltdowns. We do straightforward time. After every 28 hours, the house dares a slave. Doesn't matter if you name a building, Du Bois 1,000 times. System makes a psychic adjustment. What really turns you into a sergeant mention, turns you into a landslide of sirens, layout sketches passed between deacons, plot twists provided by white beggars in a black city. The fathers who Reagan flicked, kicking garbage, thinking about race of production, notebooks dangling out of car windows. We go the way of now extinct hand gestures, Mediterranean sandals, and underground moods in tandem. I mean, whoever I am today is still your friend. Crooked cops and crooked news junkies. Amadou Diallo is your mind on military science. Mario Woods, the gang enhancement they even put on God. If you turn down the television low enough, you can hear San Francisco begging for more war profiteering. We will not live forever, but someone out there wants us to, as mice pouring through an hourglass in Olympus, Babylon, or Babylon, Olympus. Subway car smoke session making its way into an interrogation room. Maybe it's all just one room. It's definitely all just one smoker. Live from your monotheistic toy collection. Poor people writing letters near books about Malcolm X. Ice picking the art. New floorboards for Watts prophecy, pen twitching over scrap paper, pen tweaking while smoothly a bus driver delivers incarcerated children. The Lord's door opens. All street life to a certain extent starts fair, sometimes with a spiritual memory even. Pre-dawn soul clap, your father dying even. Maybe I pushed the city too far. My sensitivities to landfill districting and minstrel whistles, white supremacist graffiti on westbound rail guards, all overcome and reauthored by revolutionary violence that chose its own protagonist or muted stage of genius. The garbage is growing voices, condensed Marxism for warrior depressives, underpasses in their pockets because they just might be deities or decent bid on the Panther name. A merciful Marxism, disquieted home life, or metaphor for relaxing next to a person who is relaxing next to a gun. I stare at my father for a few seconds, then return to my upbringing, return to the souls of Ohio black folk. You know, revolution down there pagan at this point. Do you know what the clown wants? The respect of the ant. Wants to interpret pain only, wants to pull a 38 out of a 38 out of a begging bowl, wants me to hurt my hand on this pen. I'm not tired of these rooms, just tired of the world to give them a relativity. My only change of clothes prosecuted. The government has finally learned how to write poems. Shootouts that briefly align, that make up a parable, like white bodies are paid well. Do white men even have leaders? All white people are white men. A rat pictures a river, can almost taste the racial divide, can almost roll a family member's head into a city hall legislative chamber, knows who in this good book will fly. All I do is practice, Lord. Decided not to talk out of anger ever again. Met my wife at the same time I met new audience members for our pain. We pass each other cigarettes and watch cops win. A city gone uniquely linear, Harlem of the West, do a true universe. I will always remember you in fancy clothes, my wife said. So here I sit, twisting in silk ideation. Rifle made of post-bellum tar, targets made of an honest language. The San Francisco poetry is how God knows it. It's me whining, riding among the lesser respected wolves, lesser observed militarization, Dixie list prison bookkeeping. I mean, the California greatcoats are coming. Lynch mob gossip and bourgeois debt collection. I mean, it's tempted to change professions mid-poem. In the Chicago briefing, a white sergeant saying, blank slate for all of us after this black organizer is dead. Standard academics toasting $2 wine at the tank parade. Babe, nothing, Lord. nuclear cobblestones, gun line athleticism, and the last of the inherited asthma, children given white dolls to play with in fear, facial expressions borrowed from rich people's shoestrings. I can hear hate and teach hate and call tools by people names and name people dead to themselves. No one get naturalized except federal agents. Some carving the equator in the throat soon. Sorry to make you relive all of this, Lord. All of this pre-dime monarchy friends putting up politician posters, then snorting the remainder of the pace. Minstrel script shoveled into the walls by their elders. My children sharpening quarters on the city's edge. For these audiences, I project myself into a ghost-like state. And for these gangsters, I do the same. Every now and then, take a nervous look east. Sleep becomes Christ. Sleep starts growing a racial identity. Do you ever spiral, Lord? Has the gang age betrayed us? Be patient with my poems, Lord. So much pain is a point to crime. I mean, it has to be if race traders come with it. Lord, is that my revolver in your hand? Better presidents than these have yawned at cages, have called us holy slaves, filled the school libraries with cop documentaries. Baby, I don't have money for food. Shit, I don't have a present moment at all. That'd be it.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love the way that you have, I wrote it down because I was trying to formulate my thought about your work, but I love the way that you mix surrealism, the political, and talking to God all together, and also mythology. But especially how, like, every once in a while, I love how Tom Goyson Martin puts in his like, da da da, Lord, and then it goes on, and then it goes into the poem, and then it puts in the political, and then it puts in the surreal. I texted one of my students who's on the Zoom, and I said, hey, listen to this for example of surrealism. So while you were reading, so
all to the risk of my soul, though this, I'm on a tightrope. If I play this wrong, eternal damnation. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it's good.
Risking blasphemy.
Well, it's good stuff. I don't know. It's like, it's kind of like its own prayer. Which I like, and a stream of consciousness. And I don't know if it counts as ekphrastic, because I'm not sure with the poetic forms, but I think it might be ekphrastic too. You guys will have to teach me, the other poets on the thread. But prayer, yeah, beautiful. And beautiful work, everybody. This is such a weird time, and it's nice to see you so prolific. Thank you for coming. This is become a project of the San Francisco Creative Writing Institute. You can check out our classes if you're listening to this and interested at our website, SF, as in San Francisco, writing.institute. And also, you can check out Dispatches from Quarantine, dispatchesfromquarantine.co. Submit to us, submit writing. We accept all kinds of writing, and we'd love to read yours. We're a little behind on publishing. I'd like to do a quick shout out to the library, John Smalley and Anissa. Thank you, Anissa. I lost your last name, but I remembered it at some point. Thank you for helping us, and we love you guys. Thanks for having us. And also a shout out to Margot Callard, who is helping me with the back end of the website, getting the pictures and connecting them to the art and the poetry, and then Paul Corman Roberts for helping me envision the different scenarios and the different phases of the quarantine to try to organize them, and for Brittany Delaney, our grant writer, to help us sort of develop this as a program. Thank you all. Thank you for everyone for listening. We appreciate you. Please send us more work, and let's do it again soon. All right, signing off.